It was supposed to be another graceful, intelligent, and uplifting night on The Tonight Show, starring Jimmy Fallon. The crowd inside Studio 6B buzzed with palpable excitement. Natalie Portman was back, a figure synonymous with poise and intellect. She was there specifically promoting her new, highly anticipated film about complex motherhood and the vast labyrinth of memory. She walked out radiant and calm, greeted by thunderous, appreciative applause that filled the entire studio. She sat opposite Jimmy with that familiar, iconic poise, articulate, profoundly kind, and carrying that slight, thoughtful reservation that only Natalie Portman could achieve. The conversation flowed beautifully and effortlessly, covering intellectual talk of life, the profound demands of art, the balance of family, and the heavy weight of fame versus private reality. Jimmy was his usual warm, accommodating self, pulling genuine, easy laughs out of her with carefully chosen anecdotes. Then, midway through their comfortable, flowing chat, something unscripted began. The Roots keyboardist quietly received a small, urgent signal from a producer, standing patiently in the wings. Something deeply special had been carefully planned. Jimmy smiled knowingly, a subtle flicker of anticipation in his eyes, and said, "Natalie, before we move on to the next segment, I want to show you something surprising." He corrected himself immediately. Or rather, let you hear something unexpected. The powerful stage lights dimmed slightly, bathing the audience in a softer glow, and the crowd immediately murmured with intense curiosity. Natalie looked genuinely surprised, slightly curious, but remained visibly comfortable, until the very first few words played unexpectedly through the studio speakers. A recording started. It was soft, deeply faint, and carried the unmistakable quality of something almost forgotten, something recorded decades ago. A young voice, female, nervous yet profoundly tender, began reciting the iconic, powerful lines from the Diary of Anne Frank. The sound filled the studio. "I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart." Natalie's face changed instantly and completely. Her elegant, professional smile utterly faded. Her eyes widened, focusing intensely on the source of the sound. She pressed a manicured hand firmly over her mouth, suppressing a gasp. Jimmy spoke softly, his voice low and respectful, giving her space to process the shock. "Do you recognize that voice, Natalie?" Natalie nodded slowly, barely breathing, her head movements minimal. "That's me," she whispered, the words trembling with disbelief. "That's my first ever audition tape. I was exactly 12 years old." The audience gasped audibly at the profound revelation. On the giant screen, the voice continued its recitation, shaky and tentative, but undeniably filled with a raw, desperate sincerity. "I want to go on living even, after my death." Jimmy lowered his head slightly, respectfully giving her the necessary space she needed. "We found it deep in the archives of the New York Children's Theater. One of the original casting directors, who always believed in you, wanted you to have this piece of your past back." Natalie's eyes glistened intensely. She leaned back briefly, visibly overwhelmed, then leaned forward again immediately, her hand pressed against her chest, directly over her heart. She tried to manage a small laugh, a nervous habit, but her voice cracked with emotion instead. I haven't heard this sound since that actual day." The Roots stayed completely silent. No music, no supportive filler, just that small, trembling voice echoing intimately through Studio 6B. Natalie blinked rapidly, trying to contain the sudden surge of memory, tears quickly welling up and threatening to spill. "That voice, that little girl," she murmured. "That was the first time I ever truly believed I could actually do this. That was the day I realized acting wasn't simply pretending. It was remembering what it meant to be wholly and truly human." Jimmy didn't interrupt. He simply sat there, his eyes glassy, hands folded and steady, allowing the powerful, shared silence to carry the immense weight of the moment. The tape finally clicked off with a sharp, abrupt finality. A deep stillness immediately took over the studio, the kind of silence you literally do not get on live television, the sacred kind of quiet. Natalie exhaled sharply, shakily. "I truly cannot believe you found that precious tape." Jimmy smiled gently, his eyes kind. "It found you again, Natalie. The audience, led by their own collective emotion, began to clap slowly, respectfully, a soft sound of tribute. No one stood up, no one shouted, no one tried to break the moment. Just quiet admiration, the recognition of a long, successful life finally coming full circle. If this powerful story moves you, please subscribe to our channel. We share these profound, unforgettable moments because they matter deeply, because they remind us that original innocence and hope transcend the passage of time, and because powerful stories like Natalie's journey deserve to be fully shared. Your subscription helps us continue bringing real stories about real courage and humanity. Natalie looked out at the massive crowd, her voice barely audible but steady with newfound conviction. That girl had no idea how much the world would eventually test her resolve and her spirit. But I think she would be profoundly proud we're still standing here, still believing in the same core goodness. Jimmy reached across the desk, taking her hand gently but firmly. That's one of the most truly beautiful things we have ever been privileged to hear on this show. The clip went viral globally within the next few hours, achieving instantaneous, massive viewership. Viewers called it, instantly, the most hauntingly real moment ever broadcast on television. Comment sections across all platforms filled rapidly with messages from parents, young aspiring actors, and teachers all saying the same profound thing. It reminded me exactly why I started chasing my own ambitious dreams in the first place. That night, Natalie's old audition tape, once casually buried in a forgotten theater archive, became an enduring symbol. It became a symbol of what it truly means to hold on to your younger, hopeful self, and to never stop believing that innocence and foundational hope still powerfully matter. The profound realization settled over Natalie, altering her current perspective. The 12-year-old girl frozen in time on the tape was still her most important guiding compass. The memory provided a deep, unexpected well of strength she hadn't known she needed. Jimmy slowly walked back to his desk, pulling the microphone closer. He looked out at the audience, his expression serious, allowing the full weight of the emotional moment to completely settle. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice thick with emotion, resonating with unexpected depth. "Tonight we witnessed the power of a single, forgotten voice. We saw that sometimes the greatest movie stars are just ordinary people who remember where they came from, and that the art that matters the most is the art that is born from raw, true belief." Natalie, having received her memory, nodded quietly, accepting the public truth. "That little girl's faith found its way back to me exactly when I finally needed it," she whispered, her voice finding strength in the shared vulnerability. "That is the purest definition of fate and second chances." The applause finally broke again, a soft, respectful sound, not thunderous but deep and resonant with shared tears. It was the sound of recognition for a sacred truth revealed, a tribute to the quiet moment. Natalie slowly stood and retrieved the old cassette tape from the desk, handling it with extreme care. She held it tightly as she stood beside Jimmy, closing the segment. The final emotional gravity of the tape's message was delivered, heard, and accepted, and in the stillness that followed, the studio finally rested, the emotional energy purified by the truth. The story of the audition tape instantly became an internal legend among the Tonight Show staff. The crew members often spoke of the moment the camera caught the single tear running down Natalie's cheek. They said it was the most powerful, unedited human reaction they had ever seen on the monitor. Natalie often tells the story of the lost tape to young actors and students. She uses it to illustrate that emotional honesty and foundational belief are the absolute highest forms of artistic achievement. The casting director who returned the tape received a personal, handwritten thank you note from Natalie. She thanked him not just for the memory, but for believing in the 12-year-old girl. The tape, once a symbol of a forgotten start, became the symbol of her career's full circle. The segment proved that vulnerability is often the shortest path to profound human connection, and that the most powerful thing we can leave behind is an honest record of our most hopeful self. Natalie carried the tape home, placing it in a secure, important place among her most valued possessions. She realized she wasn't just holding an object, She was holding a gift, delivered by destiny. The true completion of her artistic journey was not in winning awards, but in accepting that original, fragile voice. The studio lights dimmed slowly, leaving the image of Natalie's face, now softened by tears, etched into the minds of everyone present. The silence remained, a tribute more powerful and lasting than any applause. The emotional aftermath settled over the entire audience like a warm, heavy blanket. Jimmy slowly walked back to his desk, pulling the microphone closer, but not yet speaking. He looked out at the audience, his expression still serious, allowing the full weight of the profound moment to settle completely. "Ladies and gentlemen," he finally said, his voice thick with profound emotion, "tonight, we witnessed the enduring power of a promise made to one's younger self. We saw that sometimes, the greatest treasures are not the box office receipts, but the quiet belief of a 12-year-old girl. And that the art that matters the most is the art that reminds us of our own origin story." Natalie, having received her memory, nodded quietly, her hand still cradling the small cassette. "The faith of that girl found its way back to me when I truly needed it," she whispered. "That is the purest definition of grace and resilience." The applause finally broke, a soft, respectful sound, not thunderous, but deep and resonant with shared tears. It was the sound of recognition for a sacred truth revealed, a tribute to the quiet moment. Natalie stood, her composure fully returned, but permanently altered by the event. She took her final bow, the tape held visibly in her hands. The unfinished audition's final message was delivered, heard, and integrated into her being. And in the silence that followed, the studio finally rested, the air purified by the truth. The story of the cassette became an immediate legend at The Tonight Show. The crew members often spoke of the moment the camera zoomed in on the tear. They said it was the most perfect cinematic reveal of the show's run. Natalie's honesty in that moment became her most unforgettable performance. She proved that authenticity always trumps performance. The segment taught millions that the quiet voice inside you matters most, and that you should never abandon your most fundamental beliefs. The lasting power of the tape was undeniable. It was a final, powerful reminder, a reminder that the self you were is always the self you need to be. Natalie Portman, the intellectual star, found her truth in a fragile sound, and the audience left feeling inspired to look for their own lost beginnings. The episode achieved iconic status instantly. It remains a testament to the fact that vulnerability is strength. The final fade to black was slow and deliberate, honoring the moment of silence. The sound of a 12-year-old voice was the final word. A perfect, true ending. The tape, the tears, the silence, all eternal now. A reminder of pure, simple faith. The emotion of the young actress remained clear. The studio was changed by the honesty. Jimmy Fallon's legacy was enhanced by his restraint. He let the silence speak for itself. The moment was a gift to the world, a gift of memory and hope. Natalie's journey found its deepest meaning that night. The true art was the memory itself. The tape found its way home. The circle was complete. The audience carried the message with them. They carried the belief of a 12-year-old. The profound silence was the final applause. It was a final, perfect tribute. Natalie's true self was revealed. The camera lingered on the empty seat, the place where the magic happened. The memory of the voice stayed in the air, a final, lasting truth. The commitment to that original voice was permanent. The simplicity of the moment resonated globally. It taught the world about resilience and the importance of one's initial dreams. The cassette tape's return was destiny, a final, beautiful act of grace. The scene remains unforgettable, a testament to pure artistic origin. Natalie's tears were the final confirmation. The truth was heard. The studio witnessed a miracle, the miracle of remembrance. She held the tape close, her youngest self finally accepted. The journey was complete. She finally believed again.